I, 22 male, suspect something between my girlfriend, 22 female, and my friend, 21 male. We all live together. Am I imagining things? Background. We are two couples that live together and go to the same university. My partner of roughly 2 years, Alexis, 22 female, and our mutual friend Brooke, 22 female, initially rented the flat. The flat is enormous and pricey. There were supposed to be 3 females living there, but the final one unexpectedly left. They were going to move someplace cheaper, but they had put so much effort into the apartment and loved it so much that they couldn't bear the thought of leaving. I volunteered to move in when my lease expired in May so that we could divide the rent and utilities 3 ways. I was already sleeping over a lot. Both females were overjoyed by the prospect. Brooke began dating my closest buddy Derek just before I moved in. This was exciting since it allowed both couples to spend time with their closest friends and so's at the same time. It seemed to be ideal. Derek started staying over often, and when his parents sold their home and moved out in October, he temporarily moved in. We haven't really pushed him to locate a new apartment, since dividing things 4 ways is so beneficial to all of us. However, once again, just Alexis and Brooke are on the lease. Because we are always quiet, the apartment owner is unconcerned as long as the rent is paid. There were 3 occurrences that led me to believe something was wrong. I would never make such an allegation if it weren't for these 2 occurrences, since Alexis is such a nice and quiet girl, and Derek has been like a brother to me. They don't seem flirtatious, but as I previously said, all 4 of us are really good friends and spend a lot of time together. Incident 1. NWF Brooke and I have early courses, so we're out the door by 8 a.m. Derek and Alexis depart in the afternoon, so it's not uncommon for them to go together, albeit they normally drive separately. I plan to wait for Alexis outside of her class one of these days so I could surprise her with lunch. I watched as everyone shuffled out of the classroom, but Alexis was nowhere to be seen. When I texted her to inquire where she was, she answered, "Just got out of class, going home to study." I phoned her to check if I had simply missed her or anything, but there was no answer, which I found odd given that she had just texted me seconds before. She didn't respond for a long time, which is also uncommon for her. She's one of those females that is always on her phone. Later in the day, I bumped into Brooke, who said in passing that Derek had stayed home ill, and that she was going to bring him soup, blah blah. I didn't think much of it at the moment. When I returned home later that night, I discovered Alexis' vehicle was still parked in the same position. Because our apartment only has 3 parking places, she frequently parks in visitor parking, which causes her vehicle to move around a lot. When I asked if she'd gone to class, she got quiet before sheepishly admitting to skipping because she thought the professor was bad at explaining things, but she knows I hate it when she skips classes, something that's previously gotten her grades in trouble, but she's recently started doing better. I kissed her and told her that I trusted her judgment. She told me as I was cleaning the dishes that she probably won't skip again, since being bored alone in the home was the worst. We went about our business and I laughed. We went to bed that night, and as I lay there falling asleep, it struck me. Derek was home ill, so she shouldn't have been alone, right? She was still on the phone, so I sprang awake and inquired as to where Derek was today, since Brooke had said he was home sick. She seemed shocked by the question, although it might have been due to my being half asleep, and then instantly fully awake with a bizarre inquiry. He was here briefly in the morning, she added, but he left. To go errands or something. After the past occurrences, I thought that her disorganized response to this question looked odd, but it may simply be my imagination. Incident 2. Occurrence: I was about to toss something away in the kitchen trash when I discovered a condom wrapper that was identical to the brand Alexis and I use. It wasn't very noticeable, since it was nestled behind a cereal box, but the striking hue drew my attention. Brooke and Derek always use a different brand of toothpaste, free from the University Health Center, while ours are expensive Trojans. It was strange since we generally keep the wrappers in our different trash cans so they don't end up in the kitchen. Furthermore, Alexis and I hadn't slept together in a few days due to examinations and overall stress. I didn't go looking for a used condom or anything. I simply walked back to the room to see if any of ours had gone missing. Because we purchase in quantity, I couldn't tell. My initial impression was that Brooke and Derek had run out and broken into our cash without asking, and I was annoyed that they hadn't even asked. When I revealed the condom wrapper to Alexis later that night, her eyes widened. When I expressed my notion, she became extremely upset. She's normally pretty calm, and went on a tirade about how they were invading our privacy. When I proposed we speak to them about it, She instantly dismissed the notion and made me promise not to bring it up again until they did it again. She didn't want to have this difficult chat, which surprised me since, given that we live together, we're all quite open about. Though it's conceivable Alexis was sincere since she comes from a conservative tiny town and doesn't speak about these topics as frequently as we do. Incident 3. Derek and I get along with the guys in the flat next to us, who are recent grads from our institution. We don't hang out or anything, but we have the type of friendship where we can make small conversation about sports or anything in the hallway and beg each other to keep it down without feeling weird. I was closing up the flat last Monday, during our break, when I bumped into one of the guys from next door. We chatted football for a while, and then he stated that one of the couples in the flat enjoys early and that the walls are much too thin. I laughed because Alexis and I had on weekends, when we had the home to ourselves, Brooke and Derek usually spend weekends at her parents' house about an hour and a half away. The more I thought about it later in the day, the more I realized we hadn't had morning in nearly a month. On weekends, we'd done it later in the evening or not at all. Did he mean throughout the week? My heart kind of sank. I'm tempted to ask him to clarify, but the discussion has finished, and I feel like I've squandered my opportunity. Plus, it's a strange question, and I'm afraid I'm being paranoid. That's all there is to it. Am I insane? Is it possible that I'm searching for indicators that don't exist, or is something wrong? And if so, how should I proceed? I'm hesitant to approach her because 1. I don't want to come off as insane and jealous if nothing is going on, and 2. If anything is going on, I don't want them to start concealing it better. I was considering of stopping by one of those mornings when they're alone together, but I'm not sure how to time it. If I arrive too early or too late, people may get wary. Update 1. The majority of you advise that I contact Brooke and slash or try to intervene. I chose to do both. Everyone was back in the flat on Sunday night. I had planned to talk to Brooke about the neighbor's remark alone, but she interrupted me and said something that totally threw my idea off. She advised Derek to go to bed so he wouldn't be too fatigued for work the next day. What? I was aware Derek worked on campus, but he had always worked the same night shifts. I asked, as casually as possible, how long he'd been working mornings and when he began. He stated he started working the additional shifts a month ago and started at 9 a.m. Because I leave at 4 to 5, it's conceivable that I didn't notice. I spent the rest of the night trying to figure out whether he was lying, if he still had some mornings here at home, if Alexis was seeing someone other than Derek in the mornings, as some of you mentioned, or again, if I was simply a paranoid loser. I went to bed feeling emotionally exhausted and befuddled. I departed for school as normal the following morning, operating on autopilot. I fluctuated between thinking I'd hurry home to check on Alexis and thinking I had much too much work to dash around on the basis of a hypothesis I wasn't even convinced about. Finally, I exited my first lesson and drove directly to my vehicle to drive home. In a strange way, I kind of wish I hadn't. When I arrived to the apartment, Derek's vehicle was nowhere to be seen, only Alexis there. My pulse was racing like mad as I headed to the flat. I'm not sure what I was expecting. I could hear a man's voice inside the apartment door from outside. I could hear him speaking and laughing, and a gentle feminine murmur responding and chuckling back. I've been on this subreddit long enough to observe everyone's responses to this circumstance. I never considered what I'd do. I put my ear to the door to hear what they were saying, but I could only make out a few words here and there. There was a lot of laughter. Then I heard Alexis getting teased and shouting. Maybe I should have waited a little longer. In hindsight, I wish I had, but I couldn't. It was dead stillness in there as soon as I began messing with my keyboard. Stay tuned for the next part.